Oklahoma and Ole Miss get set to do battle Saturday down in Oxford. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Sooners and the Rebels. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Cole Thompson. We appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. As always, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. We are on the chase to 30,000 subscribers. We can't do it without your love and support. Also, guys, make sure you check out our friends over at FanDuel because, as always, we are brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, FanDuel.com/SECU to join today and get started with $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/SECU to get in on the action today. Oklahoma and Ole Miss get set to do battle Saturday in Norman. The Sooners coming off a big win over South Carolina in Columbia at Williams-Brice Stadium. Ole Miss licking their wounds from going between the hedges and falling to the Georgia Bulldogs in a game that maybe they felt like they should have had. Also, maybe there's some external distractions with some coaching searches and the name Lane Kiffin popping up in some other SEC cities. Either way, we are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Saturday in Norman. I am Chris Phillips. Joining me, as he always does, co-host, colleague, partner in crime, one of the best in the business, Cole the Bear Thompson. Bear, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. Really excited to break down this matchup with you, a matchup that I told you, Bear, admittedly, even going into it, I'm having a tough time getting a read on it, but what that tells me is this: we're going to be in for a really, really fun one and probably one full of dramatics on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, talk to me in 20 minutes when we're done with this preview, and I'll have an answer on who I think is going to win this game. Like that's kind of the bottom line. I got to talk myself into picking somebody. It's also a potential playoff elimination game for one of these two squads. You're both coming in at 6-1. You both need this win to guarantee that you give yourself a cushion to lose another game at some point during the regular season. And both these teams really are looking for that spark for different reasons. Last week, South Carolina game, Oklahoma finally was efficient running the football. Like, it looked like that version of Oklahoma's ground and pound attack could be potent enough to give them a second punch offensively. And then you talk about Ole Miss. Ole Miss really was setting the tone offensively for the first 5 drives against Georgia on the road in Athens. And then they ran out of gas and things went south and it was a road environment. So how do you handle losing a game that felt like was in your control until it wasn't? Once again on the road. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, you also have to listen to rumors that Lane Kiffin has made it clear that he is going to actually at least hear out Florida for the potential opening and become the heir apparent of Steve Spurrier. Like, add all that onto it. There's a lot of outside noise that could really derail Ole Miss's season from what just a few weeks ago looked like was going to be a year to remember in Oxford.
Bear, if nothing else, like you said, maybe it's not a college football playoff eliminator, but with both teams sitting at 6-1, certainly it feels like a playoff game to set yourself up to get in the playoff, if you will, a playoff game before the playoff. Again, guys, this one taking place Saturday, 11 a.m. Central Time on ABC in Norman, Oklahoma at Memorial Stadium. Bear, Oklahoma is a 4.5-point favorite in this game. The over-under is set at 54.5. Ole Miss leads the all-time series 2-0 in the last meeting, of course, came last year. Ole Miss won that game by a final score of 26-14. Bears, we dive in this game. I do want to start with what you mentioned and just kind of get your thoughts here. And I guess there's no way for us to really know, and maybe we make too much of it based off what happens on the field of play of Saturday, right? Because, you know, if Ole Miss goes out and doesn't play well, people are going to start to speculate, hey, is this team distracted? Are they hearing the outside noise? Are they letting it affect them? But the question has to be asked, Bear, with Lane Kiffin's name circulating when it comes to the Florida head coaching job and the Florida coaching search, and we're going to continue to hear the rumor mill and the hot boards and Lane Kiffin. We all know Florida's going big game hunting. Lane's the guy they want. How much of a distraction do you think it really is or isn't for this Ole Miss football team?
I think it's a big distraction, but I also want to make this clear. Just because of we hear Lane Kiffin's name being thrown out there does not mean he is going to take the job. It does not mean he views Florida in the same light that he views Ole Miss. I just want to make that abundant because in today's day and age, it's all about what you can provide for the roster, for the resources, for the reconstruction of your team to be competitive year in and year out. So if Ole Miss and Keith Carter can come to an agreement on what is going to be revenue distribution, annual salary, and be able to guarantee that this team has enough inertia that will get them over the hump and every single year be in that 10-2 college football playoff range, he may be content there. But regardless, his name is going to be floated around. That's just what the national media does. That's just what the public eye does. When a major opportunity opens on up and you know that his love for Florida because of his dad, Monty, who grew up in Florida and he coached with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and his wife, Layla, went to Florida, it's going to be a conversation. But for me, the bigger conversation has not to do with what is the Florida job. It has everything to do with what went wrong on those last 3 drives offensively, that you couldn't get anything moving against Georgia, that you're going to have to get moving against Oklahoma. Chris, Georgia's defense this year has been far from what we expect underneath Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann. Like, it's been disastrous at times. Slow starts allow massive leads, allow them to give up explosive plays, and all those things that we saw over against the Alabama game, the Tennessee game, you could even throw in potentially the Auburn game, they were on display against Ole Miss. Oklahoma's not the type of defense. Oklahoma's a top 10 defense. Oklahoma's a defense that can get after you. Oklahoma's a defense that has a good pass rush. They have a great secondary. They can eliminate your deep balls downfield. They can eliminate the explosive plays across the intermediate. They can take away the rushing attack. And they did all those things against a quarterback in Lenore Sellers and a run game featuring Rasul Faison by holding South Carolina to under 100 yards rushing and 1.6 yards a play. So you got to realize offensively, what can we do to have the same type of game plan that will allow us to build a lead and sustain it on the road? But better yet, defensively, what do we have to do to slow down John Mateer and a rushing attack that finally found its identity on the road against South Carolina? And they're going to have their backyard in the back pocket to be able to change and alter the course of the sound of the game, which really could put us in a position where we allow one too many explosive plays, they're off to the races, and we're down by 10, and we're not coming back up. I think that's more of a bigger deal at this point than talking about the actual Lane Kiffin Florida stuff.
Yeah, the chess match, Bear, between Lane Kiffin and Brent Venables. I mean, if you like good football from that regard, I think you're going to see that. The cat and mouse game, obviously Lane with the offensive prowess he has, and Brent Venables, what he does defensively and what they do defensively speaks for itself. In both those units, I think 2 of the best in the country at their respective sides of the football, if you will. I did want to talk about, you mentioned, Bear, Torrey Blaylock, a career-high 101 rushing yards a week ago against South Carolina. Sooners rushed for 171 yards total, 4.3 yards per carry against the Gamecocks. Was that a sign of things to come, Bear? I mean, Oklahoma now all of a sudden, you face an Ole Miss team that you and I both agree, and we talked about it all season, the way to beat Ole Miss is to run the football and run it effectively. Georgia ran it for over 220 yards in that football game. I think establishing the run early – Barry, I wanted to get your thoughts too on John Mateer, because I feel like this is something I expect him to get better week after week after week. Coming back still from the injury, we saw him firsthand, obviously, in the Red River Shootout. That game was its own thing. Don't necessarily draw conclusions from it, but he looked rusty, right? Especially from the decision-making aspect. Looked better last week, took care of the football. Still, the numbers weren't really gaudy. I feel like if you're Oklahoma, safe bet, you want to make sure you're establishing this ground game and not putting it all on John Mateer, because, it kind of feels like he's still working his way back a little bit from a confidence standpoint and just from a, getting back in the rhythm of things standpoint. So I do think it's going to be important for Oklahoma to establish the ground game early on, build off what you did last week, whether that is Torrey Blaylock or it's somebody else, and then obviously get Mateer going. I think he's going to return to his normal self very, very soon. Not that he was bad last week, but I think it's important to establish that ground game and not put it all on him per se.
You want to win the time of possession if you're Oklahoma, because if you want to play keep away from Lane Kiffin's offense, that's just the bottom line. There are 2 truths to every statement. The first is that we did see the rushing attack finally get going against South Carolina. Torrey Blaylock, over 100 yards. Xavier Robinson got involved. You didn't even have to worry about Jaden Ott, who at this point has become a non-factor, I think, on this offense. And it didn't matter because if you were constantly moving the sticks and you were winning with more than just explosive plays. That's one truth. The other truth is these are not running backs built like Josh McCray, Chauncey Bowens, Nate Frazier, and then a quarterback that we also know he's not afraid to take a hit like Gunnar Stockton, who got licked left and right throughout the week of practice and certainly was not at full speed when he took on Ole Miss and still was willing to go ahead and put his body on the line. So there is going to be that difference of the level of talent that Ole Miss has already faced off against versus the level of talent that they are facing right now. You need to be able to establish the run if you are Oklahoma, because if I do agree with you on one thing, it's not that John Mateer is not fully healthy, but what you want to see is him get back in a groove. One of the things that made him such a dynamic player was when he was in a groove and he had a good understanding of, RPO on this play. I'm going to design tuck and run on this play. I'm going to send a deep shot down the middle of the field for a 15-yard gain on the following play. It allowed him to build confidence. And so you need to be able to have all the elements available to kind of open up the playbook and make it clear, hey, on third down, we can send this type of play out there that's going to flip on Ole Miss, and they're going to be limited to getting in the backfield. Therefore, we gain 10 yards, and we get a fresh set of downs. It's second down. They know that we don't have to pass it. We can go ahead and do a quick little pitch to the outside to Xavier Robinson. He'll pick up 4 yards, and then it'll be a third and manageable. That's what you want if you were Oklahoma. If you're Ole Miss, I think the game plan is just take away the rushing attack. I'm not saying that right now there aren't wide receivers that can beat you at Oklahoma, because Isaiah Satenga, give him a lot of credit. He still is having incredible games. He's kind of taken on over as a wide receiver one. Big time 73 yards last week in the touchdown. Giovanni Gibson's getting a little bit more involved. Deion Burks is getting a little bit more involved. They're not elite receivers, but they're really, really, really good receivers that can beat you. Make John Mateer beat you in that standpoint. I'm not saying you want to live in a world where John Mateer is able to beat you, but I think that if you make John Mateer beat you, you'll be able to learn how to adjust to those kind of situations, still be able to take away the rushing element, but force them to make a lot more risque throws if you play in a lot more press man coverage. So it's going to be interesting to see from that standpoint. That's really, I think, for Ole Miss's game plan. You got to be able to make this offense one-dimensional as possible, and it's a lot easier to make this run game obsolete than it is, I think, the passing game.
Bear, real ball nowhere take coming at you, but my gut tells me something weird's going to take place in this game, like turnovers, big time special teams. Like I said, going into this one, admittedly, normally I look at a game on paper, Bear, and I immediately have sort of a gut feeling or a feeling of what's going to go down, even if I'm wrong. This is one that I don't know. This game feels perplexing. This game feels confusing. This game feels nonsensical to a degree. I don't know. I've lost, admittedly, some of the confidence I had in Oklahoma weeks ago, maybe fairly or unfairly, what have you. And then Ole Miss, I mean, how do they bounce back from that Georgia game? I don't know. There's just this game is a big question mark to me. And if that says something about me, then so be it. But this game feels like a big, fat question mark about it. We haven't even got to our picks yet, but like, either way, I don't think I'm going to feel good about this. So, Barry, it feels like something wacky is going to happen in this ball game.
I'll tell you what I believe is going to tell you the tale of the tape. Quarterback stat lines. And it feels weird to say because we always look at the quarterback and we have to say, well, they're supposed to be the most important player. You got two guys that are looking to not only push their season back in the right direction, but also still be in the hunt for a college football playoff, Heisman Trophy odds, and really set the tone of a get-right moment. Trinidad Chambliss was awesome last week when he had to be. He had 3 total touchdowns. He had over 300 yards. He was able to make plays with his legs and create second-chance opportunities. But then came the fourth quarter, and much like Jackson Dart when he took on Florida, he kind of just dribbled down his leg, and the moment got a little bit too big for him. Oklahoma, John Mateer, wanted to come back for Red River, wanted to be a part of that offense, wanted to be a reason why the Sooners were able to start off the season undefeated. He had 3 interceptions. It was not a good day at the office. He wasn't able to be as efficiently mobile as he wanted to be. And he got back in the right direction last week, but 150 passing yards and 1 touchdown, that's nothing to write home about, especially against a South Carolina team that hasn't been able to find the backside of a quality defensive play. I mean, like, that's what we're talking about. So this is a big game for both of them. Which one is able to evade the pressure on a couple of pass rushes? Which one is able to connect downfield with their vertical receiver? Which one is able to thread the needle just enough to be able to move the sticks and put yourselves in the red zone territory? Which one trusts their legs enough to be able to get a second chance and get in the end zone maybe for 6 points and that be the reason why you win? Which one is not afraid to put their body on the line and do whatever it takes for their program to guarantee that this is not the week where we enter win now mode before November? Like, that's what I think is going to be the storyline. And the thing about that, Chris, which is really important here, when you overwork it, you usually are the one to make the mistake. And that's where the wacky stuff comes into play. Because if you're doing too much and you overcorrect it, therefore somebody is able to make sure that they catch you slipping and then they take it back the other way and they make it pay. And that might be what happens for either Ole Miss or Oklahoma in this game. 1 bad fumble, 1 interception, 1 risque throw into double coverage, pick 6 all the way to the house. it may end up being the reason why Oklahoma is sitting at 7-1 or Ole Miss is going back to Oxford, still looking to guarantee their spot in the college football playoff. And I could see both happening. Multiple times I could see it happening. Because this is going to be a really interesting, weird game for both defenses and more specifically both quarterbacks.
Bear, as you were talking and you mentioned it, and it almost set like a light bulb off in my mind. This may not be the only determining factor. It certainly won't be the only one. But quarterback rushing numbers are going to be huge in this game. Huge. Whichever defense can do a better job of limiting the opposing quarterback from using their legs. Maybe that's not the end-all, be-all, but I think it's going to go a long way because Trinidad Chambliss, we know what he likes to do, 9 for 42 for 2 touchdowns against Georgia, and he's torn teams up all year on the ground. And obviously, John Mateer, it very well speaks for itself what he does with the way he improvises, with the way they use him in the run game. So, and you would think that favors Oklahoma's defense, obviously. You would, but because they're just the better defense, I think they're the better front seven. But you never know. I think that will be a telltale sign of the game, whichever one of these quarterbacks finishes with the higher rushing total. That's, in my mind, if I had to bet, I'd probably bet and say that's the team that's going to win the football game.
Here's the interesting stat that you brought up. Oklahoma's been better against mobile quarterbacks this year. You could say that they've probably faced 3 mobile quarterbacks in Jackson Arnold, in Arch Manning, and Lenore Sellers. We've seen more mobility go up against Ole Miss. So Ole Miss has seen a variety of quarterbacks that actually fit that mantra of the dual threat mentality. Physicality, finesse, winning with their legs, winning with opportunities outside the pocket. I mean, Taylon Green was one. Jake Retzlaff was one. You have to at least mention Gunnar Stockton because if he was not afraid to tuck and run and get that 22-yard score. So the mobility of quarterbacks that Ole Miss has seen is so various that they know how to play every single style. However, you are right, though. When it comes to Oklahoma, they've done a better job of eliminating the ground game when it comes to quarterback play. So which one is going to be more important? The numbers or the fact that you've seen every quarterback that can go ahead and bail you out of trouble when it comes down to that situation?
Bear, I'm going to ask the Sooners to forgive me here when I bring this up because, again, we are at the point in the season where we're talking about coaching searches and changes and potentially, the Lane Kiffin thing being a distraction. And for Ole Miss, they're kind of on the edge of their seat wondering what's next for their football program. If you're Oklahoma here, if you're Brent Venables, this is a pretty big game because you look at what is ahead. Like Bear, let's just call it for what it is. You're not out in the clear yet.
No.
Like if you're Oklahoma, you're not out in the clear yet. There's some folks out there. I know you've mentioned this, some others have, that potentially Oklahoma could be headed for a landslide and could finish the season 6-6. Like there's some people out 7-5, whatever, and we know what the expectations were before the season started, and especially with the way you started the season at 5-0, and then obviously now 6-1. You lose to Ole Miss on your home field, though. I mean, you look at what's next. You got at Tennessee, at Bama back-to-back. And then you get Mizzou and LSU to close it out. I mean, Bear, we could be talking about you going to the final stretch on a 3-game losing streak, if you're not careful. So you look at like what you've got left. This Ole Miss game is big to set the tone for this final 5-game stretch, which is the toughest 5-game stretch. This 5-game stretch is going to define your season, flat out. For everything you've done to this point, 6-1. Bear, what's your best win? What's your best win? I mean, probably Auburn, I guess.
Michigan, depending on what you think of them and based on the win.
Yeah, those two, I'd say it's a toss-up. But this 5-game stretch is going to define the season. You need to get it off on a good note because, again, Brent Venables is not in the clear yet. This is going to determine so much about this 2025 season and maybe even the future of Oklahoma football.
I'll say the quiet part out loud. 9-3 is good enough for Brent Venables to keep his job, and it may be good enough for Ole Miss to sneak into the college football playoff. With their resume, depending on who the wins are against, the committee may look at them and say they've done enough to prove that of all the 9-3 teams that we've ever had, they're at least in the clear of being in that conversation. I could see that. This is probably the most winnable game that you have of the 5. And that's not to say that you can't beat LSU. That's not to say you can't go into Bryant-Denny Stadium and hold your own against Alabama. That's not to say that your defense can't go toe-to-toe with Joey Aguilar in Tennessee. That's not to say that you can't win against Missouri. But I am saying that of the 5, knowing what this defense did last week, where 8 straight drives, Georgia was able to run it down and put up points, knowing that Trinidad Chambliss was able to get stopped on 2 drives, and that ultimately decided what was going to be the outcome of that game. Knowing that there are some limitations to Ole Miss, and also knowing that there is a rumor about their head coach leaving the program, realizing I've hit my ceiling here and I got to hit reset if I want to make a college football playoff and a national championship. This is one of the ones that you have to have, because I don't know if 9-3 is possible without it. I think that you could tell me that it would that you could still go 9-3 with the loss at Alabama. I think you could tell me if you lose to Tennessee, 9-3 is still on the table. I don't know if you can lose this one and say that you're going to get to that goal. I think it's more so 8-4 if you don't win this game.
Which no guarantees with an 8-4 record, as our Sooner friends told us before toe met leather on the season. Bear, that being said, let's get to it. Let's lock in some picks. Let's lock in some predictions. Oklahoma, Ole Miss in Norman, 11 a.m. kickoff there at Memorial Stadium. You want the honors, or you want me to go
I'm going to
first?
let you go first for this one. I'm still trying to – we're 20 minutes and I still can't figure out.
I know. Listen, I get it. Like I told you before we started, this is one that I look at it and I kind of have to do a double take. Huge game for OU on the home field. We just mentioned it. This 5-game stretch, these next 5 are going to completely shape the way we look at the 2025 season for Oklahoma, for all the great memories and the great times we've had. And this is where rubber meets the road. I mean, for Oklahoma, this is where, the men are separated from the boys, if you will, whatever phrasing you want to use here. This is what's going to define what your 25 season is, and maybe define what the future looks like for Brent Venables and the rest of this Oklahoma football program. Do I think the Lane Kiffin stuff is a distraction for Ole Miss? What I think is interesting about it, Bear, potentially, I think it could also be something that galvanizes this team. I think it could bring this team together. Bear, I don't know what it is. This is as much a gut pick as anything. Like when I looked at it, my gut, just something hit me. The spread doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why Oklahoma is such a big favorite. I really don't, because I think Ole Miss is going to go in there and beat them. I do. I just, something in my gut tells me I think Ole Miss, Trinidad Chambliss, their balance between the run and the pass. Yes, they just lost that game at Georgia, and yes, it was demoralizing, but Ole Miss has got one of the most, and I know Oklahoma's defense is special. I know they are. But I like Ole Miss's offense to do just enough. And I don't know that Oklahoma will be able to keep up offensively. I think John Mateer is getting better week to week, but it's like, even when he was before the injury, Bear, the offense still kind of was like trudging along. It's never been great at any point. Now it's just kind of okay. And in a chess match of Lane Kiffin and Brent Venables, I'm going to roll the dice with Lane Kiffin. I am. I'm going to roll the dice with Lane. Big road atmosphere, but I think second chance at it, second crack at it. I don't think Ole Miss will be fazed, obviously, by the crowd. They just went between the hedges and dealt with that crowd and that noise. Something in my gut just tells me, man, maybe something weird happens, but I think Ole Miss will outlast Oklahoma. Give me Rebels 27, Sooners 21. I think Ole Miss bounces back from that Georgia game last week, and amidst all the noise, gets a big win in Norman.
I still don't know where to go. I don't. Like, that's the worst part about this, because you can tell me on one hand that we're going to watch as Trinidad Chambliss outrushes John Mateer, but Oklahoma wins the football game. I could see that being a stat line that we look back on and say, that's where it lied to us. I could see a scenario where Oklahoma is better on third down, but Ole Miss wins by 10 points. Like, it's just they rely on their explosive plays, because that's what it takes for an Ole Miss team to win. So there's not really a good gauge on either side. The two things I am looking for in this matchup is, number one, can we see an encore performance from the rushing attack of Oklahoma? What you did last week, you have not been able to do at a consistent rate. You found a spark against Temple, then you lay a dud against Texas. You find a spark against South Carolina. History says that you're going to lay a dud against Ole Miss. Can you prove that wrong? The other thing is, can we see the explosive run game come from Ole Miss's side outside of Trinidad Chambliss? Kevin Lacey had 2 rushing touchdowns in that game. The leading rusher was Trinidad Chambliss. Outside of the red zone, Ole Miss's inability to run the football really hurt them at times and allowed Georgia to not only win the time of possession, but also ultimately the football game, and then get back up by a score of 8. So as much as it's like that needs to be a factor. We can talk about the mobility of a quarterback. You have to be able to establish the ground game. Whoever gets the last turnover is going to be the one that wins. Brain says Oklahoma. Brain 100% says Oklahoma. Heart says Ole Miss. Listen to your heart. Ole Miss. I don't feel good saying that, but Ole Miss. Money talks. And guess what? Lane Kiffin's going to be a very rich man after this season, either by Gainesville or either by Oxford. Get a win like this, and it guarantees you that you're going to add a couple more $1 million to that salary cap. So, yeah, I agree with you on one thing. John Mateer's got to be fully healthy. I think that he's improving. He's getting back. He's not where Trinidad Chambliss is. And I've been riding hot with the kid, and the kid has not let me down so far. Sticking with it. Bottom line, that's what you do with. And sometimes you got to listen to your heart, and you're an idiot for it, but you know what? You won't look back and regret it. 28-24, Ole Miss over Oklahoma. I don't like that, but I also do. I think that's the final score. Late touchdown pass by Trinidad Chambliss gets the job done.
Make it back-to-back weeks that Bear has doubted the Sooners.
I know.
Back-to-back weeks. How about that?
I know. I hate it. I don't feel good about it at all. Even a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird game. It's a coin flip. I think it could really go either way, but yeah, like I said, it's a gut pick for me. It sounds like it's a heart pick for you. It's, like I said, flip a coin. I think something weird is going to happen in this game. I will not. It'll probably be a no bet for me. It just feels too wacky, too wonky. Something weird, and this one's going to happen. That said, guys, we leave it to you all. We're both going, believe it or not, with the Ole Miss Rebels to walk into Norman and get the dub. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Who's your pick on Saturday at Memorial Stadium when Ole Miss and Oklahoma do battle? Guys, that being said, that's going to do it all for us. We appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Before we get out of here, I do want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, because as always, we are brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's got an offer you don't want to miss this NFL season. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5, and if it wins, you unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. You can build parlays, bet player props, ride the live lines. Whatever your style, FanDuel's got you covered. The NFL season's here. The only question is, are you ready to play? Visit FanDuel.com/SECU to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Once again, FanDuel.com/SECU to get in on the action today. Guys, once again, that's going to do all for us. We appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. As always, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts, all across your favorite social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. For Cole the Bear Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. We're signing off. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you all on the other side.